The Windmill in the Fog. Read by Chuck Brown. Part 1. The Whispering Hill. In a small village by the sea, there was a hill that wore a crown of fog almost every day. The hill wasn't tall or grand, but it had a quiet way of drawing your eyes. People in the village called it Whispering Hill, because the wind there always seemed to be murmuring secrets, soft ones that curled around your ears and made you pause, as if listening to something just out of reach. At the top of the hill stood an old windmill. Its white sails stretched wide like the arms of a sleepy dancer, and its wooden body creaked in the wind. The windmill hadn't turned in many years, but no one had the heart to tear it down. It belonged to the hill, or perhaps the hill belonged to it. Some said the windmill was still alive. They said that on very foggy days, if you climbed the hill and stood perfectly still, you might hear the windmill speak. Not with words exactly, but in a hush of groans and whistles and sighs that felt almost like a voice. Children dared each other to go up and listen. Most ran back down giggling, with only cold toes and wild imaginations. But one girl came back quiet. Her name was Lissa. Lissa had soft brown hair and a curious mind. She liked questions better than answers, and spent more time watching clouds than talking. Her favorite thing in the world was the fog, how it wrapped around everything and made the familiar seem mysterious. One early morning, long before the sun rose, Lissa woke in her small attic bedroom. Something had nudged her from sleep. Not a noise, but a feeling, a hush, a kind of waiting in the air. She pulled on her coat, woolly socks, and boots, and tiptoed past her snoring cat. She didn't tell her parents, though she left a note. "Going to the hill. I'll be back for breakfast." Outside, the village was still. Not even the gulls had begun their calls. The only sound was the soft squish of her boots on damp grass as she walked through the meadow and up the slope toward the fog. It was thick that morning, so thick the hill looked like a giant pillow. As she climbed, the world disappeared behind her until all she could see was white and the faint outline of the windmill ahead. She reached the top, her breath clouding in front of her, and stood before the windmill. And then she heard it. Not creaking, not wind, a voice, gentle and low, like a breeze against glass. "You came," it said. Lissa blinked. She looked behind her. No one. The voice came again, not from any direction, but from everywhere. "I've been waiting." Part 2. The Windmill Speaks. Lissa stepped closer. Her boots crunched softly on the frost-tipped grass. She placed a hand on the windmill's worn wooden door. "I'm Lissa," she said, her voice trembling just a little. "Are you really speaking?" "Yes," said the windmill. "I've spoken to many, but few stay here long enough to listen." Lissa leaned against the door. The wood was warm, strangely warm, despite the chill. "What are you?" she whispered. "A watcher," said the windmill, "a winder of fog, a keeper of the quiet things. Long ago, I turned with the breeze and whispered stories into the sails. Now I sit still and listen, but I still remember how to speak." Lissa felt as though her heart had turned into a feather, light and fluttering. "Why did you call me?" she asked. The windmill creaked softly, almost like a chuckle. "Because you asked questions when others only chased answers. Because your dreams are shaped like clouds, and your thoughts drift like birds. and because you might be the one to help me turn again." Lissa's eyebrows rose. "Turn? Like spin?" "Yes, but not just that. Turn the way a story turns, into something new." Lissa stood quietly, listening to the windmill's soft hum. It felt like standing inside a lullaby. "Will you come inside?" asked the windmill. She hesitated, then nodded. The wooden door creaked open, not pushed by her hand, but by the breath of the wind itself. Inside, the windmill was bigger than it should have been. The floor was smooth stone, set with little circles of glowing light. The air smelled like lavender and dust and something older than memory. Stairs curved upward along the wall, vanishing into shadows. In the center of the room stood a table made of driftwood and salt-polished glass. Atop it sat a small compass, turning slowly, though there was no breeze. Lissa stepped inside. "Close the door, gently," the windmill whispered. She did. At once, the fog outside became a soft glow through the walls. It felt like being inside a lantern made of mist. "I didn't know windmills had rooms like this," Lissa said. "Not all do," said the windmill. "Only the ones who've been forgotten long enough to remember their true selves." Lissa smiled. She liked that sentence very much, though she didn't fully understand it. The compass spun once, then stilled. A quiet hum pulsed through the floor, like the windmill was stretching in its sleep. "There's something I must show you," the voice said. "Something that lives in the turning of my sails. Will you climb?" Lissa nodded and walked toward the staircase. Part 3. The Room Above the Fog. The stairs wound upward in a gentle spiral, and with each step, Lissa felt a shift, like the air was changing around her, softening, thickening. The sounds of the world below faded entirely, until all she could hear was the beat of her own heart and the occasional breath of the windmill's voice. She passed windows shaped like leaves and feathers. Through them, the fog outside glowed pale blue and pink, like dawn was being painted in watercolor. Finally, she reached the top. It was a round room, small and strange. Instead of walls, there were moving pictures of the sky, clouds rolling, stars winking, winds dancing in slow spirals. The ceiling above was a great wooden wheel, the central hub of the windmill's sails, and beneath it was a round cushion where someone might sit and listen for hours. In the center of the room floated a glowing globe. It looked like a little world made of fog, with tiny shapes drifting through it, boats, birds, trees, even a sleeping cat. "This is what I remember," said the windmill. "Everything that passes through the fog, I keep a piece of it here. Not as it is now, but as it felt when it passed. Its weight, its whisper, its warmth. My memory is made of moments." Lissa stepped closer to the globe. It shimmered as she looked at it. A bird-shaped cloud formed and vanished. Then a lighthouse. Then a small girl running with a kite. She stared wide-eyed. "Can it show me anything?" "Only things that truly happened," said the windmill. "But often they are the parts people forget." Lissa placed a hand near the globe. A shape began to form. A kitchen, a table, a cat curled near a window. Her house. "You are in it now," said the windmill. "Your memories are part of mine." Part 4. The Song Beneath the Blades. Lissa sat cross-legged beneath the globe of fog and memory, her eyes fixed on the soft shapes swirling inside it. They moved slowly now, an old man fishing from a dock, a paper boat floating itself in midair, a lantern swinging from a child's hand. Every shape drifted through the mist like it belonged there. "Can anyone see this but me?" she asked softly. "Only those who are listening," the windmill said, "which is why I called to you." Lissa leaned back slightly, resting her palms on the smooth floor. It felt almost like warm stone, almost like wood. She couldn't quite tell. "What happened to your sails?" she asked. "Why don't you turn any more?" The windmill let out a long, low sigh. "The wind that once moved me has gone quiet," it said. "Not the wind outside, the true wind, the one made of wonder and of wishing. I used to turn because the world was full of those things, but now people rush, they forget. The wonder grows thin. I need help to gather it again." Lissa thought for a moment. "Is that why you asked me to climb the hill?" "Yes, I thought perhaps you might carry the spark of it still. You see the world as if it's waiting to be heard. That is rare." Lissa felt her cheeks warm. She wasn't used to praise, but there was something else stirring in her chest too, like a sleepy bird stretching its wings. "What do I need to do?" she asked. The globe above the floor began to glow more brightly. The swirling fog inside formed into a shape, a long twisting ribbon that shimmered like silk in the moonlight. "This is a thread of wonder," the windmill said, "one of many. They are scattered across hills and fields, hidden in quiet places. I need them to turn again." "Where do I find them?" "You've already found the first, by climbing here, by listening. The rest are waiting, but not far. You need only walk with care, look with your heart, and gather what most pass by." Lissa stood, brushing the back of her legs. "Will I know them when I see them?" The windmill creaked gently, like a nod. "Yes, they shimmer slightly in the corner of the eye. They might look like a feather or a forgotten toy or a puddle that reflects the stars. They are pieces of the world's wonder. You only need to hold them close and bring them back." Lissa nodded. Her heart beat steadily, not fast, not afraid, just certain. "I'll do it." The globe dimmed, and a small door opened in the far wall. It led to a narrow stair, winding back down through the fog. As she stepped through it, the windmill's voice followed her. "Thank you, Lissa. Walk gently and watch the edges of things." Part 5. Gathering Wonder. The fog on the hill had begun to thin by the time Lissa reached the bottom. Pale sunlight filtered through, brushing gold across the wet grass. Dewdrops clung to every blade like tiny glass buttons. She had no map, no guide, just the thread of feeling in her chest, like following a half-remembered tune. The first shimmer appeared near the old well by the meadow. It was a scrap of music, hanging in the air like a glint of light. As Lissa stepped closer, she heard a note, clear and soft, like a flute. When she reached for it, it melted into her hand like a warm mist. A ribbon of silver light wrapped briefly around her fingers, then vanished. But she could feel it resting in her palm, weightless and true. She smiled. The second came near the orchard, an old apple tree with a swing tied to its branch. The swing moved even though there was no wind. As Lissa touched the rope, she felt a memory rise, not hers, but someone's, a child laughing, flying through the air, cheeks flushed with joy. Another shimmer joined her, And so it went. Near the pond, she found a pebble that glowed softly when held. On the back porch of a sleepy cottage, a kitten's purr echoed like a lullaby and became another thread. Each time she found one, it wove itself gently around her wrist like a bracelet of light. By the time the sky turned the color of ripe plums, she had gathered 7 shimmers. Her feet were damp, and her heart was full. She climbed the hill once more, stepping through the thin curtain of fog that still clung to the top like a veil. The windmill waited, quiet but expectant. "You have returned," it whispered. "I found them," Lissa said, holding out her hands. Tiny sparks of light danced around her wrists. Each shimmer lifted from her skin and floated toward the sails above, tucking themselves into the joints and beams. The windmill shuddered. Then, slowly, it turned. Part 6. When the blades turn. Slow at first, just a gentle sway, but then, as each shimmer nestled into place, the windmill's arms began to spin in a slow, steady circle, not forced by wind, but moved from within, like a heart remembering how to beat. Lissa stood still, eyes wide. She felt the air shift around her, warm and cool at once, like someone wrapping her in a blanket fresh from the sun. "You did it," whispered the windmill. "You helped me remember how to move." Lissa smiled and touched the wooden wall beside her, which no longer felt so still. It hummed with quiet energy. "Would you like to see what comes next?" the windmill asked. She nodded. The door opened again, not the one leading back down, but a round one she hadn't noticed before, set higher, behind the sails. It looked out over the valley, but from where she stood, the fog made everything beyond invisible. She climbed up and stepped through the door. Outside, she found a narrow balcony, and beyond it, nothing, only mist. Then the sails turned a little faster, and the mist began to pull away. It didn't vanish exactly. It folded, curled, peeled itself back like soft paper, revealing the lines beneath a drawing. And Lissa saw them, ribbons of light in the air, moving over the land like invisible trails. Some soared high, others dipped low, threading through trees, over rooftops, around chimneys and open windows. They were the paths of wind, not just air, but feeling, wonder, memory, joy. "These are the old paths," said the windmill, "where stories fly, where dreams are carried, where the breath of the world moves when no one notices." Lissa leaned over the railing, awestruck. She could see the lines stretching beyond her village, past hills and rivers, touching places she'd never seen, castles, forests, deserts, oceans. And every so often, drifting on those lines, were shapes. Clouds shaped like elephants, boats without sails, floating fish made of music. Lissa laughed out loud. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It always was," said the windmill, "but it takes a listener to see it." Part 7. The Final Thread. Lissa stayed until the sky turned gold and rose. The windmill kept turning gently, humming with new life. But as she turned to go, the windmill's voice returned, quieter than before. "There is one more thread," it said. Lissa paused. "Another shimmer?" "Not exactly. This one is already inside you, but it must be given freely." Lissa tilted her head. "What is it?" "Your story," the windmill said. "You've gathered wonder. Now you must pass it on. Let someone else see the hidden things. You must choose someone who listens the way you do." Lissa thought about it. She thought of her younger brother, who liked to build tiny villages out of stones and leaves. She thought of the librarian who always smiled when handing her a new book. She thought of her grandmother, who used to tell bedtime stories without needing a book at all. She smiled. "I think I know who." "Good," said the windmill. "Then I will rest, and I will wait." Lissa walked back down the stairs. The globe in the center of the windmill pulsed once, then faded to a soft glow. The door opened, and the morning was waiting. As she walked home, the fog parted gently ahead of her, as though recognizing her. The shimmer light still clung faintly to her fingertips, and the world felt a little softer, a little brighter than before. She reached her house just as the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden streaks across the window panes. Her cat blinked at her from the windowsill. On the table, her parents were just sitting down to breakfast. "Sleep well?" her mother asked with a smile. Lissa paused. Then she smiled too. "I had a dream," she said, slipping off her coat and sitting down, "about a windmill, a talking one, and fog that remembered things." Her father chuckled. "That sounds like a good one." Lissa looked out the window, where the hill still wore its soft crown of mist. She nodded. It was the best one. Part 8. The Sharing of the Thread. That evening, as the sun melted into the sea, Lissa stood barefoot in the grass behind her house. The air was warm, the breeze playful, and the sky above blushed in soft pinks and gentle golds. The fog had thinned, but hadn't gone. It lingered along the edges of the fields and hedges, like it didn't quite want to leave. Inside, dinner was finished. Dishes clinked in the sink, her father humming an old tune, her mother drying plates with the same worn towel they always used. It was all perfectly ordinary, and Lissa felt quietly changed. She reached into her coat pocket and drew out a tiny stone. Not one of the shimmer threads, not glowing or magical, but one she'd picked up near the base of the windmill. It was smooth and cool, shaped almost like a teardrop. She'd held it the entire way down the hill, without thinking. "Lissa?" came a voice behind her. It was her little brother, Jory, holding a toy glider in one hand and a handful of dandelions in the other. His socks didn't match, and his nose was slightly smudged with jam. He gave her a curious look. "You okay?" She nodded and sat down on the grass. "Come here." He plopped down beside her, setting his things in his lap. "Did you go up the hill this morning? I saw your boots by the door when I woke up." "I did," she said softly. "I visited the windmill." "Again? Did it creak?" he asked. Lissa smiled faintly. "It talked." Jory tilted his head, curious but unconvinced. "You mean like talked?" She looked at him, really looked, at his wide brown eyes, the way he always listened with his whole face. She took a breath and nodded. "Yeah, it talked. It showed me a place where wind and stories live, and something else too." He waited, eyebrows lifted. She placed the smooth stone into his palm. "This is for you," she said. "It's not magic, not the kind that glows anyway, but it's part of something, and now it's yours." Jory turned the stone in his hand. "What am I supposed to do with it?" "Keep it until the next time the wind feels like it's saying something. Then go listen." He blinked, quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when a young mind brushes against something big and doesn't quite know how to say so. "Okay," he said at last. They sat in the grass together, not talking, not needing to. Above them, a thin ribbon of fog drifted past the moon, trailing a glimmer behind it like the hem of a dream. Part 9. The Long Quiet Turning. Days passed. The fog didn't disappear from the hilltop, but it shifted. It no longer clung like a curtain. It danced. It welcomed. Some days, people walking through the village would pause and glance up, thinking they'd seen a strange shape in the clouds. A fish, a feather, a kite. But only for a second. Lissa returned to the windmill often, though never quite the same way twice. Sometimes it greeted her with a soft hum, sometimes with silence. Sometimes it just opened its door and let her sit for a while. She never rushed, and the windmill never asked her to. Once she brought her grandmother, who hadn't climbed a hill in many years. They sat side by side on the platform, sipping tea from a thermos, watching fog wrap itself around the sails like a shawl. "I used to dream of places like this," her grandmother whispered. "They're still dreaming of you," Lissa replied. Later she brought Jory, who stood at the edge of the memory globe with wide eyes and said simply, "Oh." He didn't need to say more. The windmill understood. And Lissa? Lissa became a quiet gatherer of shimmer. Not every day, not even every week, just when the world whispered something worth keeping. A puddle that reflected stars, a forgotten note tucked into a library book, a giggle that escaped a child at just the right moment. She kept those threads close, and when the time felt right, she returned them to the sails. And the windmill turned, slowly, softly, always with care, just like a story being told again. Epilogue for the listener. Sometimes, if you visit the hill by the sea on a morning heavy with fog, you might hear a creak. You might think it's just the wind, or old wood, or your own imagination. But if you listen, really listen, you may hear more. You may feel a hush in your chest, and you might wonder where the stories go when no one remembers them. They don't go far. They turn slowly in the wind, waiting for someone like you. The end.